Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to this session on circularity in the built environment, from measurement to policy and practice. This is an accelerator session that has had a whole range of different players that have worked behind the scenes to put this together. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Usha Iraniga, and I'm Professor Sustainable Built Environment at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. I'm also the co-lead of the Materials Hub of this program, the Circular Built Environment program that has put tonight's event together. There are a number of other working groups that are part of the Global ABC, and I'll take you through that in a minute or two. So, what is this session going to be about? This session will present three internationally valid recommendations that were developed together by the Materials Hub. And this is to ensure that the policymakers in the built environment are defined and work together through a consensus driven process of the Global ABC and the One Planet Network. Together, we have established the 10 whole life cycle recommendations for the building's breakthrough, which has been working and influencing the uh, opportunities arising for decarbonization in the sector for the Conference of Parties meetings. To do this, we know that a baseline for circularity needs to be defined and it needs to become mainstream. It needs to be upscaled. It needs to be replicated. This session discusses the importance of measurement of circularity and presents tools to measure circularity both at a national level and at a buildings level. We also present practical examples from different parts of the world on how circularity could be implemented and the different challenges and opportunities that arise. So this session is divided into an opening session that will be taking place in a minute or two with the minister from the government of Finland. And then it's divided into two distinct parts. The first part, which is going to be talking about the national level for supporting circularity in the built environment. And the second part that is more about the practice and the practical elements to be considered. We'll be bringing in case studies from different parts of the world, and we will end with with closing remarks. So the whole session is roughly 90 minutes. We would like to start off by asking you a Slido question. So Silvana, if you can take us to the next slide. We would like to know from which part of the world you're joining us today. So you've got the slido.com if you want to do it online. If you go to slido.com and enter the number there, 4177192, or you can use a QR code with the, and using your smartphone, you can answer this question. While we have people filling in the Slido question, I'd just like to remind again that the uh, participants from different parts of the world, um, we really don't have time for questions during the session because it is quite busy and quite packed. So if there are questions that arise from the panel discussions or the keynote or any of the other speakers, we would request you to please ensure that you address your question to that specific speaker, and we will try and answer these questions during the length of today's discussion. But there's also the opportunity, of course, for you to contact the speakers and raise your questions with them later on as well after the session today. I just give participants one more minute. And also a reminder to our speakers and panelists to keep the microphone and the camera off till it is your turn to speak. Okay, so while this is going on, we might take the opportunity to move to the next slide and to give you a brief background on what is the Circular Built Environment Program. Um, and this is, as I said before, is an initiative that was started way back in 2015. The work that we have been doing on circularity was part of the One Planet Network's Sustainable Buildings and Construction Program, which then became part of the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction, and we have now become part of the materials group of the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction. We have been looking mainly at three main areas of our work, and it is about increasing our awareness and buy-in, building capacities at an individual level, but also at the global level, and to also support the technical policy and market development related to the circular built environment. So the players, as I said before, that are involved as part of the Circular Built Environment Working Group are Habitat for Humanity International, RMIT University, and the Ministry of Environment Finland, but we also have support from other working groups that are also part of the materials group. The next slide, please. I'd now like to welcome the Minister for Climate and Environment Finland, Sari Multala. Sari has been the minister since June 2023. And in January 2025, she commenced as Minister of Climate Change and Environment, where she is responsible for matters related to environment, construction, and housing. These include climate policy, nature and water protection, preventing environmental pollution, circular economy, construction and land use, and housing policy. Minister Multala is also responsible for matters covered by the Energy Department of the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment. Minister, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome also on my behalf to this Accelerator event on behalf of Government of Finland, the Ministry of Environment of Finland, and the GlobalABC Circular Built Environment Group. The Accelerator event is an official part of the World Circular Economy Forum that is a global initiative of Finland and Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund. The forum has been held since 2017, growing bigger and more powerful each year. Today we will concentrate on circularity in the built environment. The built environment entails a huge challenge for the planet. The global buildings and construction sector causes 39% of the greenhouse gas emissions and 40% waste and 50% of raw material use. That is why we need circularity and a circular economy to minimize environmental harm of construction sector and keep the construction materials in the loop. My country, Finland, has still a large environmental footprint, but we work persistently to increase our positive handprint. To that end, Finland is one of the forerunners in Europe to develop policies for circular buildings and constructions. We are committed to decrease our national environmental load. Finland's new Construction Act places a ceiling on carbon emissions from new construction, setting limit values for carbon footprint of the building's lifespan. The new legislation in Finland features also circular practices by promoting the use of reused and recycled materials, as well as the role of buildings as material banks in deconstructing projects and new constructions. While Finland has taken major steps in its policy development related to circularity in the building environment, we recognize the importance of sharing our experiences and working with our international partners. Promoting circular built environment internationally has been high on Finland's agenda for the past 10 years. The Finnish-led Sustainable Buildings and Constructions Program of the United Nations One Planet Network paved the way across the world for circular built environment for 8 years. Since 2023, this important work has continued in the GlobalABC Materials Hub in close cooperation with the One Planet Network and other key partners. Finland's key aim in this work has been to demonstrate the importance of circular economy in the built environment and how it can become a common practice. To guide international policy development, the GlobalABC Circular Built Environment Group and its partners have developed a framework to assess the baseline of circularity in the construction sector at the national level, promoted circular public procurement of the construction sector, and defined circularity in the built environment through international policy recommendations. It is important that the transition towards a circular built environment happens both in the global north and in the global south. However, we should recognize that countries and regions' local contexts vary greatly and no one solution fits all. No one should be left behind. When it comes to the fight against the triple planetary crisis, climate change, biodiversity, and pollution, there is no time to waste. Finland looks forward to a continued fruitful cooperation in promoting circularity in the built environment as a key solution to respect our planetary boundaries. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Minister. And it has really set the tone, I hope, for the conversations and discussions that we're going to be having today. Thank you very much. I hope we have a bit of a virtual applause. And if you're able to stay back and hear some of the amazing speakers that we have lined up, we would really appreciate that. Okay, so now we move to the first part of our event, the national level policy development supporting circularity in the built environment. And we have a keynote presentation to set this off by Dr. Samantha Stratton-Short. Dr. Samantha Stratton-Short is a head of the UNEP Strategic Advice and Support, Infrastructure and Project Management Group from the United Nations Office for Project Services. An architect by training and a PhD in sustainable development, Dr. Short has over 25 years international experience managing programs and advising governments, foundations, international finance institutions, NGOs, and donors on sustainable, resilient, and inclusive buildings and construction. Over to you, Samantha Stratton-Short, and your 7 minutes starts now.
Thank you for the introduction, Usha. And also thank you to Sari and to the Ministry of Climate and Environment of Finland for making the work that I'm about to present even possible. So I'm delighted to be here today. Welcome to those that are attending this exciting session. Next slide. I want to talk to you about the circularity framework that we have been working on. And basically, the background to this is that the buildings and construction sector is off track. The share of secondary materials consumed by the global economy has actually decreased from 9.1% in 2018 to 7.2% in 2023. So this is definitely not the direction that we should be heading in. And we really want to be looking towards a time when buildings will become material banks for future construction. Next slide. And we really want to emphasize that the problem is not a technological one. We have the technology to make these changes. We have the knowledge. It's an action gap. Since 2023, only 14 countries, subnational governments have actually updated their building codes. But even these don't align with the net zero goals. Next slide. So we want to be able to support this action, and we believe that in order to do that, we need tools and we need guidance, and that's what we've been working on. So next slide. So the National Circularity Assessment Framework is this tool that we have been working on with several partners, UNEP, GlobalABC, One Planet Network, and as I said, this was funded by the Ministry of Climate and Environment of Finland. And the idea behind this tool is that it enables governments to measure their circularity of their building sector with the ultimate objective of being able to reduce their raw material extraction, their waste, the environmental impact, while still considering economic and social factors. To get to this framework and to get to the tools itself, 50 international advisors were engaged across sectors, and they were involved in workshops for the development of the indicators and the tools, and in the final launching of the framework and toolkit at COP29. Next slide, please. So you can find the tool and the guidance, templates, and video on the One Planet Network website. And it's a quantitative and qualitative assessment. And in the next slide, if you go to the next slide, please. This is what the components are. So we have the framework, which we think is always really helpful for governments to understand all the different pieces and how they fit together. But then this framework is actually explored through 23 quantitative indicators around material and remote flow and environmental impact and other aspects, and also a qualitative assessment through a questionnaire across several what we call enabling domains, including institutional arrangements, policies, laws and regulations, processes, stakeholder management, finance, and data. Next slide. Thanks. So this is the one I really wanted to make sure that we got to. This is the insights we have from the pilots that have already been carried out in Senegal and Bangladesh. So in terms of the policy framework, neither country has a dedicated policy framework for circularity in the construction sector. Bangladesh has some regulations on sustainable construction and renewable energy, but there's nothing explicitly on circularity. In terms of materials, both countries are experiencing rapid construction growth, which means that they're basically turning to high carbon materials like concrete and steel, and the use of traditional, often more sustainable alternatives like rammed earth or bamboo is actually declining. These materials are considered to hold significant circularity potential, but this is being hindered by a gap between research, innovation, and market implementation, as well as social biases linking them to poverty. In terms of recycling systems, formal recycling systems for construction and demolition waste are nearly non-existent in both countries. However, Bangladesh has a relatively strong informal recycling market, with up to an estimated 15% of construction waste in Dhaka being informally reused or recycled. And then there are data gaps. Both countries struggle with data limitations. I think all countries struggle with data limitations due to inadequate infrastructure and regulations, and the predominance of informal construction, extra challenges. In Senegal, where over 80% of the buildings are built informally, tracking and managing circular practices remains a significant challenge. Thank you. Next slide. So hopefully that I think the deep dive into the pilots gives you a feel for the kind of information that we can see coming out of these assessments, but also to create the starting point for how countries can engage in improving their circularity at a national level in the buildings context. Coming up next, we have some roadmaps and Build Back Better. So we are going to have some new roadmaps supporting implementation of the identified actions. There will be a climate circularity tracker with global metrics to measure yearly circularity. Circularity for Build Back Better in post-conflict and post-disaster areas, where we'll be doing research and thought leadership. Next. So that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Samantha Stratton-Short, for this excellent presentation. We would thank you for the virtual applause and please keep it up. We would now like to go to the next slide, which is actually a question, again, using Slido, slido.com, with the number 4177192. And we would like to ask you this question. What should be the main objective of promoting circularity in the building sector in your country? And you have an option of one of the three, whether it's about minimizing raw material extraction and waste, whether it's about mitigating environmental practices, or whether it's improving social well-being and economic impact. Interesting. It still appears from the triple bottom line perspective that social and social well-being doesn't get as much of a mention as the environmental. Or maybe I'm going wrong. I don't know. Okay, so we might get you to keep responding to this, and we might move to the next speaker. We are coming towards the end of the first part of our session. Our next speaker is going to be presenting on the Global Framework for Action on Sustainable Public Procurement in the Built Environment. And I'd like to welcome Jorge Laguna Celis, who's the head of the One Planet Network from the United Nations Environment Program. Jorge is the director responsible for the UNEP's and the One Planet Network, a global community of practitioners, policymakers, and experts working towards achieving Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is about ensuring sustainable patterns of consumption and production. Jorge, please welcome to the stage, to the virtual stage, if I might put it that way, and I'll hand it over to you for your 5 minutes on the presentation of the Global Framework for Action.
Thank you very much, Usha, and all dear colleagues that have taken part and that are present in this accelerated session of the World Circular Economy Forum. I am delighted to be here today with you. And as I was reading the three questions that were there on the screen about mitigating, minimizing, and improving, my perception and my answers it is, I want to choose the three. But overall, I believe that the third one, it's absolutely central. Why are we building a better future? It is because we want to provide better shelter, better accommodation, better services for our people, but ensuring that we minimize and we recover adequately. And the minister said something that spoke very clearly to me when she presented the opening remarks of this event. We are working for harvesting the future, and we want to make sure that our built environment serves us as banks of resources and materials for the future. So this is not only an agenda of today, it's an agenda of the future. Today, I am pleased to speak in the very short minutes that I have available. Number one, to introduce the work of the One Planet Network, and in particular, the work of the Sustainable Public Procurement Program, which works very closely with the Sustainable Built Environment community, which you have heard extensively at the beginning of the program. The Sustainable Public Procurement Program of the One Planet Network is dedicated multi-stakeholder platform that helps us advance the work on the built environment and is helping us create demand by governments to make the right thing We believe that by governments taking decisions on how they purchase buildings, they can create demand for more sustainable, circular built products, but also for the materials that are required. SPP is a key driver for climate and circularity goals, as we see in the slides in front of you. We know that public procurement in construction has the potential to catalyze sustainable practices across entire economies. We know that sustainable public procurement can influence over 20% of the global domestic products in many countries and often accounts for 50% of public expenditures. It is a great way of using the power of the public purse to shift demand and to also shift supply. Therefore, what we see, and we have heard already colleagues referencing the Global Framework for Action as something that is set apart, it is because unlike sector-specific or material-focused initiative, the Global Framework for Action under the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction addresses the entire life cycle of buildings. And I believe that this is a dimension that it has not been sufficiently understood by the built environment community, looking at buildings from the conception until its eventual dismantling. And this is when we start seeing an entire life cycle approach, which is absolutely required. It helps us move beyond high-level commitments to deliver practical potential pathways for effective change at both local and national levels. And finally, it helps support ongoing efforts and aligned with existing initiatives and frameworks, including the Chaillot Declaration of the Buildings Breakthrough and the IDDI Green Procurement Pledge. Finally, it's the result of a collaborative process, and many of the partners that have spoken today, including our dear friends at UNEP, have been part of this journey. The Global Framework for Action presents sets composed of a set of 5 high-level principles. These principles are the common foundation for driving circular, nature-positive, and people-centered construction. And as you see here in the link, I want to invite you to click on the link and to be able to access both the Common Principles document, learn more about the case studies, and the actions menu, which I will speak in the last minute that I have available. Today, it's a special day for us because not only we celebrate the progress that we have done in this important community of practices that bring together the public procurement agenda with the sustainable built environment agenda. It helps us assess the work that we have done, but it helps us look forward. And today we celebrate the launching of the actions menu and mapping into the Global Framework for Action. The actions menu is expected to be a curated set of actionable strategies and tools tailored to diverse contexts. It is expected to provide a operationalization platform for the framework's 5 common principles. It will help us bridge the gap between ambition and action, helping the local and national actors to take the next steps in their own journey towards circularity. Finally, it is also a platform and a resource base for mapping initiatives and resources by providing and helping stakeholders identify synergies, avoid duplication, and accelerate overall collaboration, which is all what the One Planet Network is about. In conclusion, I really want to encourage all of you to join the Global Framework for Action, to use its tools to champion the shift towards near zero emissions and resilient buildings. I want to thank the participants for this side event, and I want us to keep in mind that our goals is to mitigate, to minimize, but also to improve overall livelihoods and conditions of our society. So by building better today, we can create the resources for building ever stronger tomorrow. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Jorge. An absolute important point that you cannot have sustainable buildings without considering procurement in the process, and that procurement just has got to be sustainable. So thank you very much for bringing yet another angle into this mix of the sustainable and circular built environment. I would now like to move on to the next part of our session today, which is a panel discussion. And we've got three fantastic panelists from different parts of the world. We've got a lawyer, we've got an architect, and we've got a decarbonization expert. And we have posed a question for them. So before I pose the question, I'd like to briefly introduce our panelists in this panel discussion, which is about circularity in the built environment at the national level. Our first panelist, who I'd like to invite virtually, is Ashok Lal. He's an architect who graduated from architecture and fine arts from the University of Cambridge in the UK and established his architectural practice in 1981 in India and committed to the principles of environmental sustainability and social responsibility. Our next panelist is Nazra Nanda, a lawyer from the Kenya Green Building Society, where she advocates driving transformation of the built environment in Kenya and Africa. And as the CEO of the Kenya Green Building Society and a special effects member of the Nairobi City Council Assembly, she champions climate change, inclusive urban development, and policy reform. And last but not the least, I'd like to invite Regis Meyer, who is a decarbonization expert from the French Ministry of Ecological Transition. And Regis is the co-chair and focal point for the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, under whose auspices we are here today. So please welcome all the three panelists, Ashok, Nazra, and Regis. And if we move to the next slide, Silvana, we can also ask the question that we have asked our panelists to prepare. So the question for our panel discussion is, what are the key issues to tackle in your country or your region to scale up circularity in the built environment at the national level? What are the drivers and what are the challenges that you see? Ashok, over to you.
Yeah, so I talked to you as an architect working from India. India is going through rapid urbanization, as we've just heard in many parts of the global south. It is estimated that we will be doubling our building stock by 2050. In emerging economies such as ours, the overwhelming demand for materials for new construction can only be met partially by circularity in the building construction sector. But that too, little as it may appear to be, is absolutely worth pursuing. It is important to remember that 70% of all new construction will be residential buildings. Although much of the new build will be greenfield, some of the new build will be in cities where there's regeneration. Old buildings are being taken down, make way for more intensive utilization of land. City regeneration calls for the establishment of local systems of demolished materials recovery and reuse. 90% of demolished material by weight is masonry and concrete. Timber and metals come next, and finally we have electrical fixtures and fittings. For metals and glass, there's already an active collection, aggregation, sorting, recycling trade. Reinforcement steel with recycled cement is becoming widely available. Same with glass. Masonry and concrete tend to go into filling of plinths and bedding of roads, etc. Some fixtures and fittings and doors and windows become hand-me-downs for poorer households. There is an enormous latent potential in the recycling of masonry and concrete waste. At present, it is limited to downcycling materials into paving blocks. Upcycling after crushing and pulverizing the waste and producing high-performance walling and floor-spanning systems could produce 30 to 40% more built-up space compared to the bulky original construction from which the material is recovered. Ideal for low-income housing, this is, for which the demand is outstripping supply, housing must be a focus area. Having recognized this latent potential brings me to the challenges we face. We need a strong R&D program for innovative and cost-effective products utilizing masonry and concrete waste primarily. Similarly, we need a dedicated R&D program for efficient use of harvested commercial timbers and retired plantation timbers, which there's quite a lot of, and bamboo into structural members, and return of bio-based doors and windows into our construction system. This has to be a long-term project with international collaboration. I can see Finland playing a strong role over here to develop and utilize our indigenous bioresources. On the side of building design, I must emphasize, we have yet to embark on evolving robust building typologies based on low carbon construction methods, which are built to last a century and can be adapted for changing uses over time. Now, that's an architectural task. Constrained masonry systems for housing and row housing typologies hold promise. Interlocking cement stabilized earth blocks for infill construction and frame structures in two-story load-bearing construction which can be dismantled, pulverized, and recast. This single idea has the greatest potential. It is simple, economical, and has negligible carbon footprint. Circularity will require more innovation in construction materials, building components, and building systems based on local resources. We should also look at the big picture outside the confines of circularity within the construction cycle, from dismantled buildings to new building. The structural system and the external walls account for 70% of embodied carbon of most buildings. Approximately 50% of carbon emissions are attributable to steel and cement. Steel is by far the worst culprit. The best strategy is to become more steel efficient by design. Steel intensity of low-rise construction is limited when you're doing 3 or 4 stories, and it shoots up when you go to taller buildings. The key here is in curtailing demand for the high carbon materials by choosing the right type of building, low-rise and mid-rise, for all our needs. Growing demand will call for more steel to be produced. Now, a byproduct of steel production is slag. Slag is now being converted into GGBS to supplement Portland cement. We will remain dependent for many years to come on coal-based thermal power to meet up developmental needs. The byproduct of thermal power is fly ash, and fly ash is also supplementing Portland cement. Pozzolana cements are cheaper than Portland cements, and they lower the carbon footprint by 10 to 15%. One should expect circularity to bring construction costs down. That is what we should be looking for. Circularity has to bring construction costs down. Then it becomes a broad social and economic movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you so much for also keeping to time. Absolutely critical points raised about the use of local materials and bringing back, if I might say, traditional practices and traditional knowledge. So thank you very much once again. And a reminder to our people online that if you have any questions or if you would like to make a comment, the chat is available to you. Nazra, would you like to come in, please?
Sure, no problem. Good morning and good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. So Usha, do I dive right into answering the questions?
Yes, please.
Great. So ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction, my name is Nasra, as mentioned, and I'll be taking you through 2 questions, really. So the first one, what are the key issues to tackle in Kenya or Africa, for me, to scale up circularity in the built environment at the national level? So I'd like to begin by giving context. So in many parts of the Global South, including Kenya and across Africa, urban contexts, or the built environment in this case more broadly, are still largely linear, and circularity remains a secondary consideration. And in my view, to scale it up nationally, there are several key issues that must be addressed. So, number one, most Global South markets are reactive and not proactive markets. What this means is we tend to wait for either something to have a consequence legally, or if something gives us an opportunity. So which means that there's a mindset framing that needs to be considered. And circularity in the Global South is still largely viewed as a technical niche rather than a socio-economic opportunity. And I think by and large it's because the sustainability conversation in and of itself has been rather technical rather than relational in approach. And I think this change will, definitely help in assisting the conversation become one which is more inclusive for communities, businesses, and governments as well. And I think the emphasis has been on the technical capacity. And I think what happens is, because of this overemphasis in the technical capacity, we have a relational gap. There's a relational gap in terms of what does circularity mean for me as a member of society. But there's also a relational gap in the sense that what opportunities would it unlock if we were to, be part and parcel of this conversation? And this also contributes to the risk, or rather the trust factor, because if I don't understand something, how can I buy into it? By and large, it becomes something that is an exclusive conversation rather than an inclusive one. And I think the third is, because of that, we have a gap when it comes to translating policy into implementation. And it becomes theoretic rather than practical. So we're not moving into action as quickly as we can. And I think the third thing I want to highlight is the fact that because it's not practical, waste or the circularity conversation has not been translated as an opportunity. So we're not seeing waste as a potential wealth generator. And as long as we see it as an additional cost, then the cities that are growing, by and large in the Global South, specifically in Africa, will not be able to leverage circularity as a multiplier effect for revenue, for jobs, for dignity, and prosperity. So I think those are, pertinent in driving this conversation. In answering what are the drivers and what are the challenges in this context, I think what are key drivers in the Kenyan and Global South context is that, number one, Africa has a young population. With the average age of 19, this continent has a lot of energetic, innovative, and creative juices flowing throughout. So how can we then connect the circularity conversation with youthful innovation? I think we need to ensure that as we are focusing on how to reach the ground, we are also including and co-creating circularity with the right platforms and language that relates to the youth demographic, because this youth demographic can become the engine of the circular built environment. Second, I think what's important for Africa is to understand that resilience should be at the forefront of this conversation. We are creating new cities, but these cities need to be resilient cities. And cities under climate stress from flooding and heat waves are constantly under pressure. So circularity in materials and infrastructure design is increasingly going to be seen as a climate adaptation strategy. And I think, lastly, I want us to look at it in the context of the investor conversations. Investors are not just keen on investing money, but also how money is made or affecting an ecosystem. So we need to be aligned with ESG as we think about these drivers. To end with the challenges, I think, number one, we have fragmented governance and institutionalized silos so far. There's often a disconnect between national policies and local implementation. So national government seems to be working on its own. subnational government works on its own, but really the national government should be giving, the overall vision and strategy so that the local governments or subnational governments would become the implementers of that strategy. So we have to work as a team because ultimately, 1, it saves time, 2, it enhances efficiency, and 3, we're all driving in a way that complements each other so that we achieve our objective, which is prosperity. And I think the second thing as a challenge is we lack localized metrics. A lot of the metrics utilized or a lot of the benchmarks being referred to are global north based. We cannot utilize global north metrics or benchmarks for global south realities. That's not to say they're wrong. They're just different and they don't apply to these local contexts. So we need to be mindful of a continent that has, on average, over 60% of the population in African cities often resides in informal settlements. There's a huge opportunity there. And I deliberately say opportunity rather than gap, because these are realities which are self-driven and self-sufficient, but often on the fringe of these conversations. So if we change that for the Global South in our approach, it means we now have volumes of impact and volumes of opportunity, because that's where a lot of the SMEs, which are the drivers of economies in the Global South, operate from. And lastly, I think culture. Waste is still seen as a burden, not a resource. We need to intentionally look at waste as wealth, but also closely tie that to the finance or access to finance conversations, not just for the top 1% or top 10%, but for the day-to-day users of waste. And this comes in a lot more when it comes to community pickers and informal settlements again. So for me, if we manage to understand that we can learn from each other without necessarily trying to change each other, then we can move ahead. Thank you.
Such great points, Nazra, really poignant in terms of that engagement at the local level and the context, which is so different from the global north. Regis, it's now your turn. We would like you, if you can please put your camera on and unmute yourself. Respond to the question that was posed as part of this panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Over to you.
So to answer the questions, the challenge are probably most to organize a channel for different type of material, so to be able to have reach a target of 70% of recycling. So the second is the need to change the habit of buildings and public works professionals. That's a huge task. So that follows the need for training to incorporate circularity into design and construction. And finally, the traceability and quality of reused materials. So to answer these challenges, in France, we organize the following. So we set a regulatory framework, quite new, because it's in force only since 2023. In 2023, we enforce a regulation concerning the extended producer responsibility, meaning that now this manufacturer, distributor, and importer are now responsible for managing the end of life of construction products. So more than 6,000 companies are registered in 2023. What is the principle? The principle, very important is that there is a free take back of waste from construction companies. That means it costs nothing to deposit when it's sort the waste in the building sector. So, but the key point is to organize a different system to collect, sort, reuse, and recycling materials. So the important thing is to have a dense network of collect point. We set some rules that in urban area, it should be a deposit point or a collect point every 10 kilometers, on rural area around 20 kilometers. So today there is around 3,000 collect points in France metropolitan area. But now the different type of materials. There's so many companies concerned that they have to delegate the responsibility to collect their recycling their materials to an eco-organism. So there is a few systems. So one concerning building product and material, another concerning minerals, another one concerning electrical equipment, and the last one concerning paint and chemical products. So today, in that, it's finance. These different systems are financed by tax on around 1 or 2% of the product, new product. And that collect around 120 million euro in 2023. So it's just starting, but we have some success because we can say that for building product and materials, we recover almost already the target, 70%. But the reuse, that means is very limited. So we have to make an effort to reuse. The second point, after the extended responsibility of the producer, is that we set an obligation for resource diagnosis in case of demolition or major renovation over 1,000 quadrat meter. So, and that is very important to be able to have a plan of waste produce and to have a matchmaking between the offer and demand of products. So that's the 2 points concerning the specific recycling and circularity policy in the building industry. There is one having indirect impact is regulation concerning the environmental regulation of buildings, aiming that we improve the energy and environmental performance of new buildings. It incorporates life cycle analysis. So, and based on a database, INES, who is I think the most comprehensive database of building material and product and equipment, LCA. So, and that is limiting, setting a limit of CO2 emission, of GHG emission, encourage the use of biosources and recycled material because their carbon cost is set to 0 because that has been already emitted. So, so that's very important to articulate circularity and climate issues. So to say something practical, there is some matchmaking. Sorry, not in English. Yes, we have matchmaking platform for using material. The Centre Scientifique et du Bâtiment operate the largest. So it's aiming to have a reuse of to go from 1% to 4% by 2027, and that's it's ongoing. And I want to point out a regulatory label with voluntary, but set by the government with the label WCEF for engagement, economy, circular construction and management that sets some charter that can organize and distinct the quality of circularity in different projects from the design, operation, construction, and commissioning. And there is a voluntary label, BBCA Renovation. It's a low carbon label which includes a circular economy component. And there is some program around France carried out by the French Agency of Environmental Authority to test and finance circular projects in the building sector. So there is a comprehensive policy on that based on environmental regulation, producer responsibility, reuse and recycling of material, and for sure, as a colleague said, we need some innovation as well to set the quality, to guarantee the quality of reused material. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Regis. Clearly, from the three panelists, what we have heard are finding ways and trying to reduce the amount of construction and demolition waste and trying to think about design and circularity practices that will help in closing the loop. So
And
this takes us...
Sorry, maybe I can add that so all these principles that on eco-design, extending the lifespan, reuse of material, reducing site waste and renovation rather than demolition, is aligned with the work that GlobalABC and Open is doing. So we are really kind to take part to that work. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, Regis. So that takes us very neatly to the end of part one and into part two. So please virtually thank all our panelists that have taken part in the discussion today. So part two, we are now moving to solutions for implementing circularity in the built environment from policy to practice. And I'd like to now start off with the first presentation. We are running slightly behind, so apologies for that. We will be starting off with the 10 whole life cycle recommendations for the buildings breakthrough, and I'd like to invite Jonathan Dewin to the virtual floor here. Jonathan is the program officer responsible for buildings and construction portfolio in the Cities Unit Climate Change Division at the United Nations Environment Programme. He joined the United Nations in 2005, so 20 years young in the UN, and has worked across the country, regional, and at the headquarters level. Jonathan, over to you, and your time starts now. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the 10 whole life cycle recommendations for the buildings breakthrough. And it was mentioned in the introduction that the recommendations were basically built under the Materials Hub, which is one of the 10 hubs of the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction that was established with the One Planet Network and the Life Cycle Initiative. Under that group, there are actually two parallel working groups that have been heavily engaged in developing these, which are the Circle Built Environment group, where the Ministry of Environment Finland is leading with RMIT University, and the Whole Life Cycle Policy Coalition, which is led by the UK and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. I just want to give a little bit of background because everybody has been hearing about the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. Now we're talking also about the Buildings Breakthrough. So I just want to give a very quick overview of what these are. So, well, the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction is an alliance hosted by UNEP, which is currently the leading global platform for all the buildings and construction stakeholders that are committed towards a zero emission, efficient and resilient building and construction sector. And the community basically meets each year at its annual assembly. It was founded at COP21, basically because buildings were under the radar in all the discussions about tackling climate change, and it's a very important sector. And today we are more than 360 members, and including 42 countries, governments that are on board. Under the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, we are managing two major international collaboration platforms, one being the Buildings Breakthrough. The Buildings Breakthrough was launched at COP28. It's part of the Breakthrough agenda that the UK launched at COP26, which is basically looking at accelerating action through international collaboration in hard-to-abate sectors. It is an operational framework, intergovernmental, where currently we have 29 countries and that have joined, plus 20 initiatives that are actually supporting the implementation. And it is focused on 5 priority actions. And those priority actions are basically standards and certification, demand creation, which includes, of course, the procurement part, finance investment, research and development, capacity building, and skills. So these are the 5 areas that now our 10 whole life cycle policy recommendations are also aiming to specifically support. And the vision under the Buildings Breakthrough is basically making sure or aiming towards having near zero emission and resilient buildings as the new normal by 2030. Very briefly, we have another platform, which is the Intergovernmental Council for Buildings and Climate, also that was actually launched in 2024. And that is basically bringing all the governments together to share best practices, create links, and do peer-to-peer learning in this context. Now, going back to the topic of our presentation on the whole life cycle recommendations, they were launched at the Buildings and Climate Global Forum, which was co-organized by the French government and UNEP, with the support of the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction in March 2024 here in Paris, where I am currently speaking to you. And they were developed through a very extensive stakeholder engagement process, which included more than 100 academic, policy, industry, and professionals from over 40 countries. Though there's a strong consensus around these 10 recommendations that were put forward. The target for us is basically the policymakers. The policymakers need to adopt these recommendations. And the goal is really to show how the whole life cycle and circularity considerations are actually critical for the implementation of the Buildings Breakthrough key priority actions. Overall, they will provide the guidance to the policymakers to implement the Buildings Breakthrough and the commitments that they have to do it nationally and locally, I would say, through highlighting the key themes and how to utilize them specifically in practice. Now, looking at the 10 recommendations that you can see here on the screen, and I'm going to talk more about how they link with the Buildings Breakthrough priorities. But the three first recommendations are really to support priority action 1, which is on standards and certification, and that focus on the definitions and the alignment of standards globally. When we look at recommendations 4 to 8, they are more looking at the demand. And when we talk about priority action 2, which is around the demand creation, of course, the procurement is a very important element in that. And their data is really important to understand, track, and evaluate the work that we do. And also, which is really critical globally, is that we need to have a common language when we are looking at this question that we can use in diverse contexts. Yeah, and so we need to actually come up with a number of product standards and benchmarks that are critical for building emissions that can drive actually the investment to decarbonize. And then the recommendation 8 to 10 are more the ones that will focus more critically on the circularity part of it. And here, very clearly, it's about prioritizing retrofitting. Of course, what is already built, we should not be dismantled and be used, reused, or made better. And then there's the whole part about material circularity, which is about, of course, the reuse of components of the building and the reuse of the materials, but also the recycling part. And then there's the approach to think about designing for circularity. And there, of course, there's more and more work about modular construction and how you can actually design for disassembly, but also how you can design for changing the way you use your building. So all these recommendations do contribute to the different priority actions also, of course, 4 and 5, which are about the capacity building and the research and development part. Now, under the Materials Hub, basically we launched an online case study platform, which actually can show some of the best practices towards the implementation of the themes that are put forward in the 10 World Life Cycle recommendations in the different parts of the world. And this platform basically aims to collect a number of real case studies. We are actually in the process of initiating the next call for additional case studies in September 2025. This is also a moment where the platform will actually be upgraded. And this is really to inspire action in the whole community. Finally, this is more to say these are the three key recommendations that we will be focusing on now by the next speakers, where we will actually give some practical examples, some of the case studies basically put forward that are related to the recommendations 8 to 10, which are the ones that are really linked to circular economy, of course, the retrofitting, extending the life of buildings, material circularity, and designing for circularity with flexible modular construction. And Usha, I'm going to hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And it's a good segue really into the upcoming presentations on recommendations 8, 9, and 10 from different parts of the world that are going to be presenting on specific examples of circularity. I would like to make a request to all our forthcoming speakers to please stick to time because we are running late and we don't want to go too much over the time that has been allocated to us. So on to life cycle recommendation 8, and this is looking specifically at the Renata Sampaio Ferreira building in Sao Paulo in Brazil. And we have presenting on this case study Gustavo Cedroni, who is the lead architect and partner at Metro Arquitetos. Founded in the year 2000, Metro Arquitetos is a Sao Paulo-based architecture firm known for its multidisciplinary practice across a range of scales, from temporary installations to major interventions. Over to you, Gustavo. Please unmute yourself and your 5 minutes starts now. Thank you.
Good morning, good evening. Thank you, Usha. Sorry for this issue. Well, I'm going to present a practical case here in São Paulo. So I'm an architect of Metro Arquitetos, which are a studio based here in São Paulo. And we did this retrofit in a great building here, a modernist building here in São Paulo. So the renovation and restoration of Renata Sampaio, originally designed by the architect Oswaldo Bratke, who died. The project was made in 1956, has a total area of 7.5 thousand square meters, and it is located in a very important corner of São Paulo downtown. The renovation aimed to transform the building, which was previously a commercial building, into a residential building. The building is part of a series of new projects with the same goal, to bring more residents to downtown, the area here in São Paulo, which have the best urban infrastructure in the city. So we are doing now 8 projects similar to that in the same area. Next slide, please. In addition to restoration and recovery of the building itself, we propose to revive a typical way of life in downtown São Paulo through the conception of its new program. With its residential units ranging from 26 to 2.40 square meters, which is not so common here in the market, our regular market. The market used to do the same typology units in the same building. Next. The interior design was also developed by our office, and it was based on a system of new furniture combined with old furniture. Next. The main intervention aims to solve a long-standing problem in that building, the original one. So between the original window and the cobogó, this element, the facade element, a place with no access, became a surface that used to collect dirty and attracts pigeons. The project proposed the partial removal of the existing window and the installation of the new lines of window, transforming that area into balconies for the units, which allows access to the main element of the building, the cobogós. So that was the main change that we did in the facade. So we create a new line of windows and fix that original project problem and create this balcony to all units. Next, please. The project envisions ground floor service open from dawn until late at night. So we have a restaurant, a coffee, and a lobby all of them connected in the ground floor, along with the leisure areas in the intermediate floor, also accessible to the public. This diversity of programs and units in the same building guide all the project interventions. Next, please. Lastly, the pool, the only visible intervention, reinforces the transformation of the building through a more playful program, with the downtown landscape as a background. So we are in this area, we have typical commercial buildings, and this is one of the first projects we made, this residential now program, and we really wanted to put this swimming pool in the corner between the commercial buildings to force this transformation. Next, please. The entire concrete structures, all the stairs, all the facades, as well as part of the wooden floor, the existing wooden floor, were used in and incorporated in the new building. So these elements together represent 55% of the entire new building. So it was a really simple intervention in terms of the exterior. We preserve and restore everything about the building, and of course all the open space area that used to be commercial office, we transform into residential units. That's it. Thank you, Usha.
Thank you, Gustavo, and such a great example of demonstrating that retrofitting can happen, and it just doesn't happen, need to happen in the global north. It can happen in the global south as well. Pradeep is going to be presenting on recommendation 9 and on seismic retrofitting of heritage structures integrating earthquake resistance technology. Pradeep is fine. Pradeep on my system. Pradeep Matia has been serving as an urban environment specialist at Lalitpur Metropolitan City for the last 20 years, based in Nepal. He has extensive experience in leading and managing a wide array of projects in integrated urban environmental management and buildings construction, and his work encompasses advisory and capacity building efforts at both the community and policy levels. Pradeep, I hope you can hear us. The floor is yours.
Namaste. Namaste. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Pradeep Amatya, and from Nepal, and I am going to present a presentation on circular economy application in seismic retrofitting of heritage structure or technological integration. So this is the picture before earthquake and after earthquake, and this is the current photo of the Harishankar temple. In 2015, Nepal struck a 7.8 magnitude earthquake, and that had killed 9,000 people killed and over 20,000 were injured. And this has severely damaged historical places of Kathmandu, Lalitpur, and Bhaktapur. And so UNESCO led the efforts to restore the heritage site. So highlighting Nepal's vulnerability to earthquake, Government of Nepal calls for stricter building codes and disaster preparedness programs. So we did some retrofitting of the temple. So we use some right style structure column, like this is one of the types of cantilever wooden column, which is also called right style structural column, designed to be both decorative and functional. These columns typically features layered interlocking wooden and metal accent. They are used in buildings to provide support while maintaining an open plan aesthetics and integrating into architectural elements. So in this way, we put some iron steel inside the wooden, and we use some for the wall purpose. We use chicken wire mesh, and that is because it is flexible mesh. as a backing for the plaster and providing a surface for the finish to adhere to the strengthening the bond between the finish and the wall. Interior masonry walls employing wire laths with the plaster also add a strength that binds metals together. You can see the chicken wire mesh is used as for the plaster, and also you can see some before the temple was like this. It is kept some diagonal cross bracing with steel. The roof trusses are spaced widely apart and are not connected to one another. Here you can see this lacks a lateral strength, makes them prone to movement in an earthquake and could ultimately lead to the collapse of the whole structure. So we put some cross bracing with steel like this in and the east ends of the gallery levels after the installation of steel cross bracing. Diagonal braces effectively tie the horizontal timbers beams together, creating a rigid wire truss. So also we use it in the temple. There is a open space is there, so we put a timber A-frame installations there. In here you can see installation of steel corner brasses onto the timber A-frames. These brasses serves to strengthen timber joints and unite all of the timber pieces into event of seismic movement. And here metals are used. Salvaged stone pieces, bricks, and carved metals from the collapsed section are more than 50% of the this bricks are used. Strong, intact older beams, columns, and door frames are repurposed if structurally it is sound. Old lime plaster and mortars that have been crossed or mild are reused in the new composition for consistency. And there is some decorative roof tiles, floor tiles that are reclaimed and replaced. Recovered wrought iron, bronze, and brass are reforged. In the stone structure, sun-dried bricks that are survived are reused. Additional mud bricks are made traditionally to replicate this temple. So in conclusion, we can say heritage structures are invaluable due to their cultural and historical significance. So we did a seismic retrofitting is that is crucial for preserving and protecting heritage sites. Like this is the name of the temple is the Harishankar Temple against this potential earthquakes, ensuring they retain their structural integrity and cultural relevance for the future generation, balancing the cultural heritage with safety. Thank you.
Jacob Simvero is from Habitat for Humanity, the Construction Practices Manager. Jacob is driving sustainable and healthy housing solutions in low-income contexts, in the context of Africa and in particular Uganda. He leads initiatives on green building technology, circular economy, and climate resilient construction across East Africa. So he's going to be presenting a case study associated with recommendation 10. Over to you, Jacob.
Thanks, Usha. Next slide. Yeah, so the project I'm going to present is a project that we've been working on with our partner, Easy Housing in Uganda. And the goal was to come up with a complete house that can be purchased at the factory and just assembled on site. And at the end of life, it can still be disassembled and either reused or repurposed for different houses or different purposes. So we've partnered with Easy Housing. Easy Housing is a construction company based in Uganda and also operating in Kenya. And they mainly deal with wood or wooden products. So their houses are completely wooden. And Habitat works a lot with the low-income communities in Uganda and different parts of Africa and also across the globe, headquartered in the US in Atlanta. So for this project and the project that I want to present on, We fabricate everything starting from the foundation, the columns, the concrete columns are fabricated at the factory. The decks are also fabricated at the factory, the floor deck, the walls, the roof trusses, the windows and doors, all of them fabricated at the workshop, and the client can just walk in, purchase a package, and then it's transported to the site. And the assembly of the same can be done by the local artisans on site. It's been done in such a way that it's very simple to assemble on site. The only thing that's done on site is fixing the roof finish, depending on what the client prefers, whether it's the shingles or the stone-coated roofing sheets, or if it's the corrugated roofing sheets. So all that can be customized depending on the customer's need. Next slide. Yeah, so just to speak a little bit about the house or the project that I'm talking about, some of the features to make it more circular and also to make it more flexible. So Easy Housing designed it in such a way that it's easy to assemble, but also easy to disassemble. So everything comes as panels, and we only use screws to assemble on site, which means if you want to disassemble, you just unscrew the screws, and then you are able to have the elements and even move the house from one site to another. Or if one element has issues and needs to be repaired, it can actually be disassembled and then repaired and then returned, so that you don't have to bring down the entire house or to affect a lot of elements just to repair one thing. And then also it's been done in such a way that a lot of work is done at the factory where the Easy Housing has the equipment, so they're able to do all the technical and the complex work at the factory. And then on site is just simple tools. You just need a screwdriver, whether it's a mechanized, or it's just the simple tools. The artisans can just use whatever they have to be able to assemble very quickly. Even in 1 or 2 days, you can be able to assemble a house depending on the crew that you have. We've also incorporated some durability into it by ensuring that the timber is well treated, and then it's also very well varnished and protected from water, to just make sure that the house lasts longer. And also, even at the end of it, the materials that remain can be repurposed to do either to build other houses, or they can be used even to do furniture and other elements within a house. We've also looked at the needs of our families. Some families will need smaller houses, some families will need bigger houses. Sometimes the needs the needs evolve with time. Maybe you started with a 1-bedroom house, and then the family, you have more kids and you need maybe a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. Then we've made that possible, that you can still adapt the house by either adding or reducing, depending on the need, without necessarily affecting the design of the existing house. So the elements are modular, and they can be adapted depending on what the client wants. Also, the designs can be changed a little bit without really not changing what has been assembled at the factory. So we just put in, because housing is more personal and people want a space that they feel addresses their needs. So this has also been factored into it, so that as many people as possible can buy and be able to build the house. So we are focusing more on the low income and also the middle income. So part of it, why we've done it at the factory and just you go to assemble on site, was to lower the labor costs and also to make it easier to mass produce the house, and that will lower the cost because of the economies of scale. So the project is already on in Uganda, and currently we are in the process of finalizing the pilots and then rolling it out into the market for now commercialization, for people to come and buy and be able to, Easy Housing will be able to supply that. But for the time being, we are building for habitat mostly the beneficiaries that are served under Habitat, and Easy Housing will be able to roll it out to some of their clients within Uganda and also other areas where they want to take the technology. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So next slide.
Thank you, Jacob. A really good example of looking at how design for circularity, if it's done well, can actually support the needs of the users, but also at the same time consider environmental impact and social impacts, as well as the economic impacts. And I would like to introduce Irene.
It's okay, Usha. I can just introduce myself and start with the presentation, if that's fine.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Irene. I'm working at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. I'm part of the circular pathway, circular products and materials, and I've been leading our work on circular performance measurement and management. I'm really excited today to tell you a bit more about our new launch. This is the Circular Transition Indicators for Buildings. We launched it at the World Circular Economy Forum on Tuesday. And in the next slide, you see this is based on work that we've been carrying on at WBCSD since 6 years now to develop a standardized approach to circular performance measurement for business. And CTI for Buildings is the fourth sectoral guide that we publish recently, just Tuesday. The next slide tells you a bit about the fact that we've been working on the project for about 2 years, and this is in collaboration with Arcadis and Arup in the lead, but also with many stakeholders, and also benefiting from the platform of the Circular Built Environment, which has allowed us to go through very extensive consultations. And also in the next slide, you'll see in the last 4 months that we've tested the feasibility and the strength of the approach we developed together in several buildings and projects globally. That helped us refine the methodology and also make sure that we're meeting diverse needs of different geographies, but also highlighted the need to address the stages of a building's life cycle, which other speakers have also addressed so far. The next slide is where I'll spend a bit more time. It's the CTI for Buildings version 1, the approach in a nutshell. We follow the logic of the CTI core methodology. You find it at the center of the slide. And this is the methodology that is centered around the levers that a company can influence. And we assess circular performance at these 3 essentially key intervention points. One is material procurement and measured by percentage circular inflow. The other is the design stage. This is measured by percentage recovery potential. And then there's post-activity, end of life, which is measured by percentage actual recovery. And these 3 indicators measure the percentage material circularity, which is the CTI headline indicator. Now, the CTI for Buildings methodology also follows the 7 steps, which we find to the left of the slide. And this is a cycle that starts with determining the scope of the project and goes all the way through to ending with planning and acting, helping companies to set clear action roadmaps that result in improvements of circular resource use. The methodology, wait a second, I'm still on that slide. To the right, you'll see, yes, just a slide before. Yes, that one. So to the right, you'll see that the methodology is structured around the 3 indicator modules. There's material flow indicators, and those form the percentage material circularity that I've outlined. Those are mandatory for each assessment. And then we have a huge focus on circular design indicators, and we've seen with many presentations how crucial those are to a circular built environment. We assess through those how much a company embeds circular design principles, the mountability, adaptability, for example. And these form the percentage recovery potential, which is a key indicator in the material flow, and therefore it's also mandatory for assessment. Then we also understand that there's a big focus on GHG performance, and therefore we measure carbon intensity. This depends on users' objectives to measure circularity, and therefore it's not a mandatory indicator, but highly recommended. In the next slide, you see we use the sharing layers approach to provide users with the ability to perform the assessment at a good level of granularity. We are focusing in the current guide on structure, scheme, space plan, and service layers. And in the future, we'll probably also integrate all the layers at once. The assessment of the whole building layer is possible. We suggested using a weighted average approach, and this is after calculating the percentage material circularity of each stage. The next slide shows the life cycle stages approach. So we recognize the buildings are designed for dynamic lifetimes, and therefore we recommend to measure circular performance at each stage of a building's life cycle. This helps mitigate challenges around material uncertainty, but also very importantly encourages collaboration among stakeholders across life cycle phases. After the building's deconstruction, there is an overall circularity score that emerges that can also be adjusted with the longevity factor if the lifetime of the building was extended. Now, the next slide has the QR code. That's where you find the guide. And to finalize, also, I'd like to put this in a wider context of the Global Circularity Protocol. This is work that we are leading at WBCSD with over 80 organizations and in partnership with Open Planet Network at UNEP, in close collaboration also with the team. And that is also available for you to download with the QR code if you want to learn more about it. I'm available in the chat for any questions. I'll put a link to the report as well, and looking forward to any questions and to staying engaged with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene. And I hope the audience can see how we've started with something very general at a national level with the National Circularity Assessment Framework. And now we've gone down to really at the building level, but into the detail and mathematical modeling at the building level. If we move to the next slide, we do have a quick slide or question for you. The next one, Silvana, which is really about the sorts of circularity you might be thinking, or you may have actually applied in your work, which might be recommendation 8 on extending the life of existing buildings, or utilizing circular materials, or even thinking about circular design. And once again, slido.com 4177192. Or using the QR code. And we have tried to use as much QR code as possible across all the slides. And of course, all these slides would be made available to you. So it's good to see that from the poll so far, we are seeing that people have used all the 3 recommendations, which is great to see. I'm not sure whether Pradeep has been able to join us or not, but we will try and come back to Pradeep again at the end, and we'll just continue with the current program as they are. And apologies that we are running terribly late with all the IT issues that we've been having. So now we're moving to our next panel discussion. And again, we have got a wonderful range of speakers who are going to be talking to us about the application of the 10 whole life cycle recommendations for implementation of circularity. So I'd like to put on notice Lendi Diaz, Nangula Amutenya, and Stefan Rao. Please be ready to take off when I give you the word. So firstly, Slendi Diaz, who's the Circular Economy Lead from the Ministry of Environment, Colombia. She's been working as a circular economist for both the public and the private sectors. And she's also worked as the Circular Economy Ambassador for LATAM. Nangula Amutenya. She's the environmental coordinator at the municipality of Walvis Bay in Namibia, and has served as local expert for UN Habitat's Circular Construction for Sub-Saharan Africa, or SICOSA project. And she supports the development and dissemination of the SICOSA toolkit. And last but not least, Stefan Rao, who is an architect by training and a principal urban development specialist at the Asian Development Bank, where he leads the urban and regional planning community of practice and its related support to the People's Republic of China. And he contributes to ADB's wide urban policy and its publications. So we have a question once again for our panelists. And if we move to the next slide, Silvana, the question is, from the 10 whole life cycle recommendations perspectives, which one would be critical for your country or your region, and why? So could we please get our panelists, starting with you, Slendy? Please unmute, if possible.
Hey. Yes,
And the floor
hello,
is yours.
Joshua, Silvana, and hi. Thank you very much for this wonderful invitation. My recommendations would be the implementation of retrofit strategies, considering that there are a lot of benefits that we can achieve while doing retrofit. In general, it comes with savings, important savings, and reduction of the water and the energy consumption of existing buildings. The efficiency strategies improve the operational costs and the overall performance of the building. Retrofit allows partial interventions while the building is still in operation and functional. It helps us to reduce the operational emissions of the buildings, and also help us to reduce the demolition of existing buildings. Therefore, we will have less construction and demolition waste. And one of the most important aspects and recommendation is to retrofit buildings, because it helps us to increase the lifespan of buildings. Instead of build additional square meters, we can increase the use of existing built areas through retrofitting, reducing the environmental impacts of new buildings and the materials extraction for them. We can reduce the emissions related to materials extraction, demolition, transportation, and waste management. By the way, retrofit is more cost-effective than reconstruction and demolition. Help us to extend the commercial lifespan of the buildings, and can elevate the occupancy rates of buildings, considering that there are a lot of underused areas or empty areas in current constructed buildings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Slendy. Much appreciated for keeping to time. Could we please get our next speaker, Nangula?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Usha. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation. I will be sharing why material circularity, that is recommendation 9, why it connects directly to our local realities. I will also highlight what is already happening on the ground, and then explore what we need to do to make it thrive. To begin with, we do know that Sub-Saharan Africa is urbanizing faster than any other region in the world. It's expected that by 2050, around 75% of the building needed in Sub-Saharan Africa still needs to be built. That is tremendous, but it's also a unique opportunity. We can either continue with a traditional linear model or take more. We can either continue with a traditional linear model of take make and dispose, which is leading to environmental degradation, or we can choose a more sustainable path. And material circularity gives us that alternative. Material circularity is already starting to take shape in Namibia and nearby countries. For example, there is crash construction and demolition waste that is mixed with crushed waste grass that is being used now to make bricks. These unique bricks work wonders here because the input materials are locally available, they are culturally acceptable, the bricks are affordable, and the whole process is inclusive, especially of informal workers who are already deeply involved in the reuse and recovery of the input materials. In other words, circularity is not something we have to introduce from scratch. It already exists in many of our local practice. What we now need is to recognize it, is to support, to regulate, and scale up these practices so they become a normal part of how we build. From a local government perspective, material circularity brings more valuable benefits. It helps to ease the pressure from our municipal landfill site. It reduces the cost of waste services. It supports a provision of low-cost housing that works within a limited city budget. It also encourages stronger partnerships between ourselves, the local authorities, and community, as well as small business. These insights show how subnational governments are not only implementers, we are also key enablers. When we invest in capacity, regulation, and localized system, we can unlock real pathways for scaling circularity. Despite all this progress in implementing circularity, there are still key challenges that we must address if we want to fully realize the benefits of circularity. One of the most pressing issue, which has also been highlighted by a few speakers before me, is the lack of regulations and clear standards and building codes for using construction waste materials. Without proper guidance in place, many builders are very reluctant to adapt recycled materials because of concerns about safety and also quality. Closely linked to this is the lack of access and reliable information, because the builders need to know where do they find the recycled materials, how to use them safely and effectively, and what quality and safety standards apply. These challenges are connected, and without clear regulations, quality assurance, and access to data, it becomes difficult to scale circular practices beyond these isolated projects. In conclusion, Namibia and Sub-Saharan Africa urgently need stronger policies, better infrastructure for recovery, and storing of demolition waste, and systems that ensure consistent standards, consistent quality standards. With these pieces in place, we can build on what is already working and make circular construction a normal and reliable part of everyday development across our communities. Thank you.
We can move forward to the next speaker, Stefan Rao. He's the Principal Urban Development Specialist from the Asian Development Bank. The floor is yours, Stefan, to answer to the question on the 10 whole life cycle recommendations and which one would be critical for your country or region and why.
Yeah, thank you very much for this invitation and for this excellent session. So I'm working in Asia and in our developing member countries, the issue of design, but also all the other 10, also all the other 9 recommendations are critical. So I want to focus on design for this session. So, and in general at ADB, we embrace circular economy and also implement projects, technical assistance projects, and also we have internal training to colleagues so that we really can mainstream this in operations throughout our countries. And I'm working in the People's Republic of China, where we also have specific technical assistance projects and also loan projects where we implement very advanced principles. So that also applies to ocean pollution reduction and so forth, and also to the building industry in general. In fact, I have a TA that's currently under implementation that also contributes to this. For this discussion, I want to offer a few principles that relate to the big scale, like even national level of urban and regional planning, and then also down to the maybe even the furniture level. So I want to discuss the principle of demand. So sometimes, and in some countries, overly ambitious planning can lead to a vast oversupply, and of course that would not be that would violate the circularity principle, because it can not even be used in the first cycle, and of course nonetheless be used in a second cycle. So that applies to over construction and oversupply of even public infrastructure like roads and others, and of course also down to buildings and other related real estate products. So principle of demand. The principle of redundancy is very directly related to the design. So when we design on the urban scale, we should always consider that our design should design patterns, urban patterns that can be used for different kind of uses, so that when the use that we're originally planning for and the uses change because the demand and the market and the city is adapting to new economies, can adapt with these changes. So principle of redundancy also applies to the building level, of course. So if we are asked to design an office building or a residential building, the way we should design the building is that we already should have the life cycle of the building in mind, where in the future the demand again may change, and then the building can very simply be adapted to a new use if we have a redundant design. When we design, of course, the principle of reuse is very important. So I think Nanjula just also had mentioned that adaptive reuse of buildings. So look for buildings that are probably already there, existing when you have a demand, and then reuse them adaptively before you build new structures, if identifying the needs. And I think on the building scale, of course, the principle of disassemblability and reassemblability would be an important principle as well. So changing or transforming sort of the construction industry, the construction site by for example, sustainable pre-construction, and there are many examples. For example, in Northern Europe or in other places where whole building parts are constructed in a factory and then delivered to the site and then assembled, and then they're designed in a way that they can be reassembled and then reassembled in another place as needed. And then, of course, that can apply to also different scales. So building element scale all the way down to smaller scale elements of a building to be reassemblable and reassemblable. The principle of use of recycled materials, and in China we are doing that proactively, and there's even a code where buildings have to have a certain percentage of their materials be recycled. That's part of a code, and I think that was just also alluded to just now by previous speakers. Recyclable materials, recycled materials, recyclable materials. I think that was just also mentioned before. And then also renewable materials, I think, is an important aspect to be covered. That when we choose of course, materials, it starts with design. Not every material allows every design. So these life cycle principles should apply, from the conception of the building, from the conception of the demand of a building, all the way through. So specific examples for China. If I still have time, Usha, please cut me off if I go over. So I mentioned that there's a code, and then also we apply in several countries, and including in China, where my focus of the work is also the principle of green building. So we apply green building standards, and in the green building standard, it also lays out whole design principles, location principles, and they also include circularity principles, among other sustainable building and urban design principles. So so I think on the design level, on the building scale, I think the key is really redundant buildings, redundant rooms. So design buildings that can allow flexible rearrangements inside through a good design of the access structures, the hallways, the staircases, the elevators, and so forth, to be able to have different kinds of access systems and so forth. And also design buildings that they can grow old with the people growing old. And then you have building accessibility, public infrastructure accessibility, and don't need, without the need to redesign and restructure if a society ages, which is also something that's happening over. Okay, I'll stop here on these design principles, and happy to come again if needed. Thank you, Usha.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Nangula. I hope everybody can hear me okay, because it seems like I was having some problems with Teams as well. So moving along to the final presenter on this part of the session, we'll now move to Devi Hanum, who is a Program Management Officer, Urban Basic Services, Global Solutions Division of UN Habitat. She has been covering areas of wash and waste management. A sanitary engineer with a background in civil engineering, she spent decades working in the field of waste management and environmental management. And Devi is going to present the SECOSA Action Toolkit. Over to you, Devi.
Thank you very much, Usha, and really pleased to be here with all of you. I think I can start with SECOSA. What does it mean? SECOSA is circular construction and building in sub-Saharan Africa. So why sub-Saharan Africa? Because here we are tackle the waste-wise approach on the waste management. So under the waste-wise program, we have the ACCP, which is African Clean Cities Platform. And in collaborations with the Regional Office of Africa, we selected the Africa region. That's why the name is SECOSA, but maybe in other regions will have a different name. And here we're focusing on two countries, that is Kenya and Namibia. And also why Kenya and Namibia? Because its importance of the affordable housing, it is on the national agenda and the UN engagement with the two countries. So we started with the challenges and opportunities why we have the SECOSA project. So the SECOSA Action Toolkit as the output. One is the populations, and of course with the increased populations, there will be the rapid urbanizations and the unplanned expansion. And the third one, focusing on the waste generations. We are already overwhelmed with the waste generations and also handling the waste management in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and this will be expected to be more than triple as currently. And the last one is again about the adequate and affordable housing. So what is the opportunity here? We have three main opportunities that 3/4 of the buildings is not yet been constructed. So this is a very good opportunity. And then the second, waste as secondary resources in the building and construction sector is not yet discussed in depth or is not yet really utilized really formally. And then the third one, the guide the development of the construction sector in sub-Saharan Africa is in the right direction. So as we know that in many of the countries and regions, I can say also even in the developed countries, when there was no proper guideline developed, then the circularity, it is not properly going to the right direction. So next, please. So the objective of the SICOSA project is to strengthen the sustainability building and construction sectors by applying circular economy and low carbon principles. That's a waste-wise approach under the waste management initiative in urban basic services section of us. And then where is that the value housing value chains, improving access to affordable housing and reducing the ecological footprint of cities in sub-Saharan Africa. So the project is directly contributing this shift toward a green economy, which is resource efficiency, social inclusive, and low carbon emissions. So we have two products here. Number one is a handbook, and number two is an implementation guide. So next slides, I will slightly introduce the two products. Next, please. Before introducing the products, I will give like a glimpse on the roadmap of the action toolkits, how it's developed. So it started with the pre-launch or launching of the project in Afri cities and also in WOOF 11. And it's ended with the launching also in the WOOF 12. This is the World Urban Forum, UN Habitat, the biggest forum for the urban. So it was in 2022, and then during the 2022 until 2024, there was the expert working group meetings, the number one and number two, and we have a stakeholders consultations meeting in Kenya and also Namibia, and stakeholders consultation meeting in Kenya. In addition to discuss about the action toolkits, also to have the validation exercise for the what they call it construction and demolition waste training plant from the construction authority, this Kenya Construction Authority. And then we have pre-launch. It was, delayed 2 times because of the uprising, I can say. Maybe it's a little bit demonstrations in Kenya, in Nairobi specifically. And we ended with launch in WOOF and also providing the training for the participants during the WOOF 12. The next, we have already some discussions about the stakeholders and countries. We will discuss maybe further on that if I have time. And then we go to the products of the SICOSA Action Toolkit, which is the handbook, first one. This handbook is examines benefit and risk of circular economy approach to sustainable building and construction sectors from the waste management perspective. So we are focusing on the waste management, on the circularity of the construction and the construction and housing sectors. So we have 3 waste lines: agriculture, construction and demolition waste, and also municipal waste. This is also providing the practical case studies that can be scaled up in the national wide, and policies and regulations gap. This is exercises from 2 countries focus. This is Kenya and Namibia. And additional to South Africa, maybe Nangula mentions why South Africa, because in Namibia, there are some waste management adapted by the South African regulations. Next, please. So the implementation guide here is serves as a roadmap to navigate challenges on circular construction, specifically tailored to policymakers in sub-Saharan Africa. So the recommendations, it's more how this policy decision makers adapt to circularity, and having the steps of the implementing guide of the construction and building sectors on the circularity. So it's also outlining the various stages of circular construction life cycle. I think it was discussed before, but we started with the product manufacturer until the building, the construction. And for the recommendations, also emphasizing the crucial of the different stakeholders, and also empowering the local communities, fostering collaborations, and also upgrading the traditional practices in the regions and so in the focus country. Next, please. I think that's all for my presentations. Here on the left is the QR code to go directly to the SICOSA Action Toolkit. And if I can say for the last sentence here, this SICOSA Action Toolkit is quite general, and it's providing the exercises how to implement the guidelines, focusing on the circular and construction and housing sectors. So this can be adapted in other regions, but of course with the modifications here and there, and also the recommendations might also slightly change, and then the exercising may be also a little bit different. But this openly can be adapted. Thank you very much for listening. And if there is any questions, it's my email address and also my colleague's email address. Over to you, Usha.
Thank you very much, Devi. Silvana, can we move to the closing remarks by Thomas Haig, Head of Circular Economy Office of the Ministry of Environment of Chile. Tomas is going to be speaking to us in Spanish, but we do have a voice captions in English.
Hola, mi nombre es Tomás Sayej y soy el jefe de la Oficina de Economía Circular del Ministerio de Medio Ambiente de Chile. Recibimos con gratitud esta invitación a dar estas palabras al final de este evento, una invitación que reconoce el trabajo que hemos realizado como uno de los países que tiene implementación de la economía circular en el sector de la construcción. Creemos que es una oportunidad valiosa para compartir la experiencia chilena en este ámbito. Chile es un país pequeño, pero con una gran ambición climática. Hemos adoptado la descarbonización, la circularidad y la resiliencia como políticas de Estado en respuesta a la triple crisis ambiental, de cambio climático, de contaminación y de pérdida de biodiversidad. Y a pesar de que nuestra institucionalidad ambiental es relativamente joven, hemos logrado construir una cierta continuidad en esta agenda más allá de los ciclos políticos. Un hito clave en la elaboración de esta estrategia es la hoja de ruta para un Chile circular al 2040, instrumento de política pública que orienta nuestra transición hacia un desarrollo regenerativo y con una visión que pone el bienestar de las personas al centro, promoviendo un modelo de producción que genere empleos verdes y nuevas oportunidades en todo el país. Esta hoja de ruta, que fue liderada por el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente junto al Ministerio de Economía, la Agencia de Sostenibilidad y Cambio Climático, fue publicada el año 2021 tras un proceso iniciado en 2019 y se articula con una serie de otros instrumentos estratégicos como la Estrategia Nacional de Crecimiento Verde, la Política en el 50, la Estrategia Nacional de Electromovilidad, la de Hidrógeno Verde, la de Recursos Hídricos, el Plan Nacional de Diseño, la Estrategia de Construcción Sustentable, entre otros instrumentos, ¿no? Y es este ecosistema de políticas y regulaciones el que ha permitido ir transformando nuestro modelo de desarrollo hacia formas más sostenibles de producir y construir. Paralelamente y de forma temprana para el contexto nacional se elaboró la hoja de ruta de residuos de construcción y demolición y economía circular en este sector al 2035. Esta fue publicada en 2020 y esta es una hoja de ruta sectorial que fue fruto también de 2 años de trabajo colaborativo entre distintos ministerios, el de Vivienda, el de Obras Públicas, el de Medio Ambiente, también la Corporación de Fomento de la Producción, la Corfo, además del programa Construye 2025, que es un programa de Corfo, y tuvo la participación activa también de la academia, el sector privado y la sociedad civil. Este fue el primer instrumento público en Chile enfocado en economía circular desde una perspectiva sectorial y define 5 ejes estratégicos con acciones y metas para una gestión eficiente de materiales y residuos de construcción, promoviendo productividad, cumplimiento regulatorio y una reducción de impactos ambientales, buscando siempre el enfoque lineal tradicional. El proceso generar un proceso progresivo del instrumento por parte de actores públicos y privados, y hoy, 5 años después de su publicación, esta hoja se ha convertido en una referencia para los actores del sector. Existen plataformas de economía circular en escuelas de arquitectura y construcción y se han impulsado procesos de normalización muy importantes para mejorar la calidad y la sostenibilidad del sector. Además de esto, ha habido mucha acción independiente del sector. Ellos han sido un socio clave, en particular la Cámara Chilena de la Construcción ha tenido un rol muy activo en la implementación de la hoja de ruta y en 5 años se ha producido un cambio importante, digamos, Se pasó de irresponsabilidades a, digamos, una situación en que los residuos se reconocen como un problema de productividad y costos, y en donde hay un sector que incluso se pone metas para ir superando las brechas, ¿no? También se ha desarrollado una naciente industria de formación para los trabajadores, fortaleciendo sus competencias en gestión ambiental y prevención de residuos, y se impulsó una estrategia sectorial propia de economía circular en construcción por parte del sector privado, articulando esfuerzos de distintos actores. A pesar de estos avances, aún hay muchos desafíos importantes, desde lo regulatorio y lo normativo hasta la infraestructura para la valorización y disposición final de residuos, pero la brecha más significativa sigue siendo el financiamiento y la dificultad de articular inversiones público-privadas. Para abordar este tema, hace 2 años comenzamos el diseño de una propuesta para postular a un fondo GEF, Economía Circular en Construcción. Ya se logró la adjudicación de este proyecto y está a puertas de comenzar, ¿verdad? Es un proyecto GEF de largo alcance, digamos, que va a estar funcionando durante al menos 4 años y que tiene 4 componentes principales: marco legal institucional, infraestructura de calidad y pilotos, financiamiento y negocios para la circularidad y gestión de datos, formación y conocimiento. Bueno, para terminar, quisiera invitar a todos los países y organizaciones, especialmente los de nuestra región, a la transición a la economía circular, tanto en el sector construcción como en cualquier otro, ¿no? Chile está siempre compartir su experiencia, generar alianzas y desarrollar proyectos de cooperación internacional que impulsen un sector de la construcción más resiliente, eficiente y de bajas emisiones. Muchas gracias.
Well, we've come to the end of our presentation. We had a wonderful set of speakers and panelists presenting to us today. In particular, I would like to thank Silvana and Emma, who have helped and worked behind the scenes. I know we've gone really well over time, but there's still a few of you that are around. We're very grateful, and we thank you for sharing your thoughts through the Slidos and your questions. Feel free to reach out to the panelists and to all the speakers. They've all indicated that they're happy to hear from you. We wish you all a very good day ahead, and hopefully you took away some thoughts and some ideas, and hopefully some actions for change to make this world or your local habitat much more circular than what it is tomorrow than it is today. So thank you very much for your time and your attention, and we wish you well. Goodbye from all of us here at the WCEF Accelerator session on circular economy. Thank you.